and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
USA, I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And I'm freezing. But here we are after Thanksgiving. Hope you all had a nice one. And we will remind you again that Free Speech TV is in pledge mode at the moment. So we're on a different schedule. The show is being telecast on
Friday nights at 10 p.m., Saturday nights at 11 p.m., Sunday afternoons at 1 p.m., but all those times are Eastern. So adjust for your time zone.
Until December 21st.
Yes.
And in the news this week, some big wins for transgender people. One versus the U.S. Army, another against a Maine school system, and we picked up some wins in Dade County, Florida, and Toledo, Ohio. But there was a setback in a federal court in Texas for transgender people.
We'll tell you about all of those. Also this week, the Labor Department has finally issued its rule on no discrimination by federal contractors in employment. But maybe the big news is the step forward on the push for a federal LGBT civil rights bill.
And in a first, a major league umpire says, "I'm out."
That was so clever.
I had to do it.
We don't have a lot of marriage news this week, but we just got news as we're taping on Wednesday afternoon that the 11th Circuit in Florida, which includes Florida, has rejected a stay. We may have marriage in Florida within a month.
And we got a good ruling from the European Court for you LGBT asylum seekers.
In Washington, D.C., they have banned so-called conversion therapy for minors.
Finland has opened marriage to same-sex couples.
And there's a delightful picture of an Austrian politician confronting the Pope on rights for women and gay people.
And it's more interesting what she said to him.
Yeah.
On World AIDS Day, which was this past Monday, there were calls for an end to AIDS in the United States by 2020 and in the world by 2030.
We've heard these calls before, but we have some details around World AIDS Day to fill in. I will review a new lesbian-themed movie, the Foxy Merkins, opening in Brooklyn, New York this weekend. And I'll also tell you about another movie on the documentary on the 60s and 70s feminist movement.
Okay.
It's quite interesting.
Well, let's give them all the good news for our transgender friends and viewers. I think one of the big ones is the decision of the U.S. Army. They have, because of a lawsuit from the ACLU, they have agreed to change the names on a key identification document for 2 transgender vets, assume everyone. It's called the Certificate of Release or Discharge, and it will now be in line with the new name that the person has and their true gender. And it's the kind of thing that determines their eligibility for benefits and legal protections that are tied to military service. And they need it when applying for jobs oftentimes, and it doesn't line up with their presentation.
It's a big mess when all your documents are not consistent, and this has been a particular problem for vets. And there are a lot of transgender veterans of the armed services. This is a case brought by the ACLU on behalf of 2 veterans in New Jersey, Army veterans, but the assumption is that this will apply across the board. So if you are in the position of wanting these documents changed for yourself, you can apply and look up this ACLU New Jersey case for a roadmap on how to achieve this.
And lest we forget, transgender people are not entitled to open service in the United States military still.
No, so this is veterans only. This is not currently serving personnel, although, you know, the question has been raised in reference to a new rule that the Defense Department adopted earlier this year that is supposed to change the way, or gives the opportunity to change the way transgender people are evaluated for service, and we'll see whether they or our new defense secretary, should he ever be confirmed.
Ashton Kutcher. No, it's Ashton something.
Carter.
Right, I knew that. I
think we could count on the support of Ashton Kutcher.
Yes.
Ashton Carter, I don't know yet. All right, in other news, in Miami-Dade County, the county, not the city, their county commission has, by a vote of 8-3, adopted a gender identity and expression non-discrimination law, or included transgender identity and expression in the human rights law.
It passed 8-3. It covers jobs, housing, and public accommodations. And the opponents turned out in droves and testified at length. And their main argument is that this is going to give carte blanche for males presenting as women to prowl women's restrooms.
Now, this is not a new argument.
It's not a new argument, but it's the one they keep making, and it's totally specious and outrageous, and they present absolutely no evidence that this has happened anywhere in the world.
Because it doesn't happen. They've come up with a few phony stories that are lies. And someone from Equality Florida, which is the good activist group for us down there, made a very eloquent statement at the hearing about how this law exists in the city of Miami and here and there and everywhere, and in every one of the jurisdictions he named, no cases of any complaints, no problems, none of these bathroom invasions. And to keep throwing this up as a shibboleth is inappropriate and disgusting.
Well, in the state of Maine, a transgender girl named Nicole Maines, M-A-I-N-E-S, who's now 17. When she was in grade school and in middle school, they denied her the right to use the girls' restroom because some grandpa complained about this. Not because she was doing anything wrong, he just didn't like the idea. So she had this suit that went on for years and years and years, and it was finally settled for $75,000.
Because she's a transgender girl.
Yes, transgender. I'm sorry, did I not say that? We were talking about transgenders. And so the school says they're not going to, the school system, they're in Orono School.
Orono.
Oh, there you go. She's a New Englander from time to time. The Orono schools have agreed not to discriminate anymore, but it took an awfully long time to settle this.
Exactly, and to finalize the agreement, and I think there are trainings and penalties and everything now written into this.
And she ended up going to private school for high school.
Now she's going to college.
Yeah, but it was rough on her in the public school system
you bet. There. And speaking of rough on, there's a transgender woman in Toledo, Ohio, who was violently attacked and had a broken jaw, and testified at a hearing with her jaw wired shut, painful sight, painful to experience. But in answer to her testimony, the Toledo City Council has voted to add gender identity and expression to the hate crimes law as a category of illegal crime, something to add on as a motivation for the crime.
But then there's what happened in the Fifth Circuit out of Texas. A federal judge ruled that Title VII does not protect transgender people under sex discrimination. This is a setback because one of the ways that the EEOC has ruled that transgender folks are covered is under sex discrimination, and other courts as well.
Here's what happened. First of all, this is a truck driving instructor, a transgender male, who sued for having been discriminated against and said it was sex discrimination. And unfortunately, his lawyer didn't present any evidence that included the EEOC rulings or other court rulings, and made a really bad case. And the judge said, one reason I can't call this sex discrimination is because the lawyer presented such a terrible case. I have no evidence of that here. But he also made a distinction in his ruling between sex discrimination and transgender discrimination. And he said, and I don't know whether this is valid or will hold up or whatever, and it's certainly something we want to ultimately attack with the Civil Rights Bill, but what he said was this was not about gender roles or fulfilling gender stereotypes. It was they don't like a transgender person, period. They just don't. And there is no law against that. There are laws against sex discrimination that have been interpreted in these cases, but we don't like transgender people is not against the law in Texas yet.
Although one of the things under Title VII is not conforming to gender stereotypes, which transgender people sometimes don't.
Absolutely, but that is
they do.
But that is he's saying that's not the same thing as just not liking transgender people per se.
So we need protection.
We do need protection.
And we're going to finally get it under the Obama.
Go ahead.
We're finally going to get it under the Obama executive order, which covers contractors. Now, the president signed this back on July 21st, but rules had to be promulgated by the Labor Department and by the Office of Management and Budget, and they're now in place. So once they're published in the Federal Register
today.
Well, it goes into effect 120 days from now and applies to contracts that are entered into after that 120 days. Now, this is
so don't go filing your discrimination complaint if you're employed by a federal contractor right now. You have to wait 4 months.
Now, what did we say
that
this covers?
Effect.
What percentage of companies in the United States have some sort of federal contract?
A lot.
A lot. And it's the first federal action ensuring that anti-LGBT discrimination in the public sector won't be tolerated. I mean, you know, there's something in the Violence Against Women Act and that, but this is a non-discrimination act.
It is, but it covers only employment. So two things. First, also this week, the Senate confirmed 2 Obama nominees to the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that were somewhat controversial, especially one of them, David Lopez, because he had worked on behalf of transgender people, and the right-wing crazies came out of the dirt to throw this bathroom stuff at him.
And there'll be more of them next year in the United States Senate, and they're in charge next year. So let's get all this done.
But in this Senate, and with the change of rules that requires only 50% to +1 to confirm someone.
Yes, Democrats finally said no more cloture, no more 60 votes for these appointments, presidential appointments, and we're doing.
The Supreme Court appointments still require more, but for these appointments you could get by. So they each got, so he got about 54 votes, which was enough to confirm him. The other nominee got more. But this is 2 good people on the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which will help in all these non-discrimination cases. But here's what excites me. On December 10th, the Center for American Progress, which is a kind of lefty group in Washington, is going to release a report on discrimination against LGBT people. And it's going to cover the spectrum. It's not going to be just employment. It's going to include public accommodations, housing, federal actions, the whole range of ways in which people can be discriminated against. And it's going to come forth with the evidence of actual discrimination, and they're in releasing this report on the 10th. They're going to have a conference, a meeting, whatever, a panel. It's going to include Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon, who's been one of our chief supporters and who has supported the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. But all of this is to turn this around to a comprehensive civil rights bill. Chad Griffin of the Human Rights Campaign is going to be there, and a couple of other key people. And all of this is to really move forward on this idea of a comprehensive bill, not just either a bad Employment Non-Discrimination Act that takes us backwards with 2 broad religious exemptions, or a slightly better but which is still only employment. The whole push now, and I was at a meeting this week with my colleagues from Queer Nation and our friends from Get Equal to talk about how to move forward on pushing for this nationally.
Now, it does help to have present evidence, though, of course, if these senators and House members would just watch Gay USA, they would know, or read the paper, they would know there's discrimination against gay people. But sometimes I remember when we were fighting for the gay rights bill back in the 80s, they would say, we met with the head of the city council, and he goes, well, I'd love to do this, but where's the discrimination? He said this is in the 80s. So wait a minute.
They're still saying it today.
Oh, wait a minute. So the Human Rights Commission, which was not essentially authorized to do this, said we will take complaints from gays and lesbians, and we will record them, even though we can't do anything about them. And they presented this thick book, plopped it on the table, and look. It gave the people who were sort of in the middle cover to then say, oh, well, it seems to be a serious problem. There's a book on it.
I think it gave them reasons.
Well, look, they were just scared. I mean, they knew it was the wrong. They knew.
Well, I agree they're scared. I also think they're ignorant. And I said something at this meeting of my Queer Nation Get Equal colleagues this week that I don't think you've ever heard come out of my mouth, which is, we need a documentary.
On what?
On discrimination.
Oh.
We need people to stand up and say, this is how I've been discriminated against, and show it to people. Maybe a feature-length documentary, maybe 6-second Vine videos, maybe 2-minute videos that go viral.
The Times of Harvey Milk, he was killed.
Yes, but that was a long time ago.
Oh,
I'm talking about current
changed.
Discrimination. The same kind of thing you're talking about, except on video. People testifying to the world.
We could call it, it gets worse sometimes.
Well, Get Equal is going to be pursuing something like this with people testifying in their own ways about instances of discrimination, the same kind of thing. So you can keep an eye on their website at getequal.org.
I remember going to my fellow members in Dignity at the time. I was a gay Catholic in a gay Catholic group when I was a kid, and presenting this and saying we need to come forward with our stories of things that have happened to us. Mm-hmm. And this guy comes up to me in the group, how dare you ask us to think about those terrible things? You were really hurting. I said, give me a break. We got to talk about it or we're not going to make any progress.
Well, the latest example of someone talking about it is a Major League Baseball umpire, Dale Scott. Now, he's a big deal. He has umpired 3 World Series, 3 All-Star games, a lot of other important events. He is a favorite among his peers. He's 55 years old. He's been doing it for a long time. And he is a major figure. And
got a picture? There he is.
There he is with in action on the left and on the right with his partner of 28 years.
Michael Rausch.
Yes.
They've been together.
They got married last year. And Dale says that he, he's been out and known in baseball for a long, long time. And people, thank you for grooming me, have been very supportive. But that he finally decided it was time to say it publicly because it could have an impact.
Absolutely. He said if this, and he put it in quotes, revelation, happened to touch someone somewhere, that's what's important to me. He said, I'm not the type to make a big deal about it, that kind of stuff, but he was, and this is like, he's the sort of the first person in the whole reffing industry in Major League sports.
He's the first person in any aspect, players or refs in Major League Baseball to be out and continue to operate on the field.
Right.
He is the Jason Collins and the Michael Sam of Major League Baseball.
So none
Thank
of this,
you. Very nice.
No more of this kill the umpire stuff because it'll be a hate crime this time. I shouldn't make a joke.
You shouldn't because
he was doing a wonderful thing.
Yes, and he's a highly respected operator in his field.
Yes.
Also, thank you to the District of Columbia City Council, which unanimously approved a bill to ban conversion therapy for minors.
Now that Marion Barry's not on the council to cast the anti-gay vote.
Well, he wasn't completely anti-gay.
He was a holdout on gay rights in many respects.
At any rate, that now makes California, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. There's a bill pending in New York and others being proposed elsewhere. It's a slow slog, but I'm impressed that we're actually passing these bills. That's nice.
In Florida, we have the first open gay in leadership in the legislature, although he's in the minority. State Representative David Richardson was selected as the Democratic floor leader in 2012, and he was the first out candidate elected to the legislature.
And sad story.
I'm sorry, he became the Democratic floor leader now. In 2012, he was the first out candidate to get elected. I just want to clear that up.
Weren't there several elected that year?
Well, he was the first.
Okay. In the Bronx, New York, a street fight between male partners ended with one of them killing the other. Oh, yes. Terrible story. The killer is a 20-year-old. The dead partner was 46. The 20-year-old punched the 46-year-old, who fell to the ground, hit his head, and died. So now the question is, will the 20-year-old be charged with murder or some kind of manslaughter or whatever? But it's a terrible story.
Now, some of you out there, and we appreciate the stories that you send our way, some of you send me every bad thing every right-wing preacher says all the time, and we generally don't do those. But Scott Lively is an exception because he's the one who ran for governor of Massachusetts and did pretty well.
He did?
Well, I mean, he got a healthy percentage of the vote. I mean, a lot of votes. Yeah. Anyway, he appeared on True News, and he said that this guy is the guy
True News.
This is the guy who inspired the.
Let's call ourselves True News.
Well, no, I have a new name for us. If you would just wait.
Okay. Sorry.
No, Scott Lively is the one being sued because he's aiding and abetting the Ugandans in their anti-gay law. Anyway. He said that homosexuality is worse than mass murder since it caused Noah's flood. And for the benefit of our international viewers, he also said that the U.S. is, quote, the mystery Babylon, might mean something to you, to right-wing Christians, that is spreading homosexuality to all the nations. So maybe we could change the name of the show to Mystery Babylon.
It's a long way to go for a bad title.
I know, but it's the week after Thanksgiving, and there wasn't a lot of marriage news, and we're doing some stories that we wouldn't normally do.
Do you have anything else before we get to the small amount of marriage news?
Well, the people, some of the gays in Alabama wanted to name their gay rights bill after Tim Cook, and he said, and the Apple said, please don't do that.
Yeah, and so then the lesbian representative said, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it. And then they said, well, we really didn't mean to come down on you. It's going back and
there's
forth.
A new campaign from Lambda called Don't Erase Us. Don't Erase Us. It's they're highlighting the laws banning or restricting discussions of LGBT issues in classrooms. And this campaign is to eliminate that discrimination. If you want to know where they are, they're Alabama and Texas, and where they say things like, students must be taught that being gay is, quote, not a lifestyle acceptable to the general public.
We have a long way to go,
And the
folks.
others are Arizona, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Utah. But believe me, we're not doing so well in New York in terms of integrating these issues, although we're making a little bit of progress.
Yeah. All right, on to marriage news. Well, the headline evidently is Florida. Florida courts, several of them, have approved same-sex marriage, have struck down the bans, but all of that has been on hold, waiting the movement of these cases through the federal court system. So it's now at the 11th Circuit, which is the federal court that includes Florida and Georgia and Alabama,
Correct.
I think. And,
that's correct.
And so our side said to the 11th Circuit, look, take away these stays. There's no reason to prevent people from marrying. All these cases have been unanimous in overturning the marriage bans, and we're going to win anyway. And why should these stays be in effect? Lift it. So the 11th Circuit has refused the right wing's request to extend the stay, and the right wing can still go to the Supreme Court and say, please extend the stay. But the Supreme Court hasn't been extending stays a lot lately. Now,
much to the consternation of Clarence Thomas and Antonin Scalia.
Although these are still cases at a lower level, so they could say, well, let's wait until the 11th Circuit rules. So we don't know. But technically, you could have same-sex marriage legal in Florida in January.
And in the 8th Circuit, where in Nebraska, where we don't have an appeals decision yet, right?
Right.
The ACLU is seeking a preliminary injunction to allow same-sex couples to marry while the lawsuit proceeds.
Same
it's
thing.
all part of the same thing.
Yeah, but no decision from the Eighth Circuit yet. In Montana, where same-sex marriage is legal now, they're debating whether to give exemptions to clerks, government clerks, who don't want to issue licenses to same-sex couples.
This is the next big battle, or it's the current battle.
You know what surprised me about it, though? Whoever's in charge of them said, you know, if they have ethical, whatever that is, ethical and religious reasons, what would be an ethical reason not to give a license to a same-sex couple?
None.
Okay, so the local paper covers this, and I'm reading through the comments from the readers. Unanimously against the clerks. How dare these government employees think that they can make distinctions, that they can discriminate, they have to stop this, this is illegal. It was great, it was unbelievable.
It's just them not doing their jobs, and talk about a slippery slope if you start letting people choose who to serve and all that kind of stuff.
That was in the comments too, someone very, very eloquent about drawing those parallels. So I think the people of Montana, they were not reading the gay newspaper. This was one of the regular city newspapers in Montana. It was very heartening to see. Thank you, Montana readers.
All right.
Can we go internationally now?
Yes, we have a bunch of international news.
We do.
I guess we should start with Finland, yes?
Yes, let's start with Finland.
The parliament there's a big rally in Helsinki because we won. The parliament voted, it was close, 105 to 92 to open marriage to same-sex couples. They joined their neighbors in Scandinavia. They're considered a Nordic country, not Scandinavian. But the legislators were forced to take up the bill after the movement collected 166,000 signatures on a petition. I wish we had that option here. I'm not for a lot of referendum government, but when the legislature refuses to act, as it always does in many places, especially New York, they refuse to vote on things, the people can force at least the legislature to vote.
I'm a little wary on that. It's a tempting idea, but given what citizens in this country are capable of doing in putting together these kinds of petitions, you could wreak havoc very quickly.
Well, look, I'm not crazy about what happens in California all the time, where rich people put these referenda on the ballots. But that's different.
Wait till the Koch brothers get to the
that's different.
The pipeline.
That's different. This is to compel a legislature that is refusing to act. We've all been through this frustration.
I understand, but where do you draw the line?
Because we keep saying, if they just voted, it would win. I say in New York, if you put the transgender rights bill on the floor of the Senate, it would win, but they just block a vote on it because they'd be embarrassed to be on the record for the rest of their lives having voted against it. And the thing is, if they vote it down, you're not in a worse position, and you know where these bigots stand.
The problem is, this is not the only thing they will vote on.
Well, the Koch brothers don't have any trouble getting their legislators to vote on whatever they want.
We defeated the Keystone Pipeline.
Well,
for the moment, anyway.
I mean, come on! They're going to have a new Congress in the fall that can turn that around.
And the president can veto it.
January that can turn that around.
Anyway, so yes, it confirmed a citizens' initiative. It's the first time they've ever done that in Finland, but they are waiting till 2016 for it to take effect to give them time to change laws and regulations and get everything on the same page.
The Parliament has something called a Grand Committee. It has to approve it before it goes back to the Parliament for a final review, and it was a close vote. So I hope that there's no right-wing action that could possibly take this away. Well, but 105 to 92 is pretty close.
Yes, it is. But I am taken this week with Ulrike Lunacek.
Oh, yes.
Of Austria. She is a lesbian representative from the Green Party to the European Parliament. And we saw a lot of stories of the Pope going to the European Parliament and what he had to say.
Lecturing them about being rule makers and not, compassionate. How about you?
Well, what we didn't see in the mainstream press was that Ulrike Lunacek, member of the European Parliament, there in the gray on the left, gave Pope Francis a rainbow scarf and asked him to speak out for same-sex marriage and women's rights and contras and condoms for AIDS.
Absolutely. She said to him, and I didn't hear anything about those issues in your speech, and I was disappointed. Got it? And it's so important for people in power to speak up to other people in power.
Yes.
I mean, and not just say, oh, it's so nice to meet you. We've got our mayor, de Blasio, slobbering all over the Pope coming to New York like it's the greatest thing, and all New Yorkers will welcome him. Stop saying that, because it's not true of me.
Well, you saw in the Sunday New York Times the little dialogue between Elton John and Darren Walker, the head of the Ford Foundation, out gay black man. And they both say, oh, we love the new Pope. We love the new Pope. Two gay men in power sitting there saying how much they love the Pope.
Well, it's you know, it was that Father Jeffrey Farrow who's out and has been disciplined for being gay out in, I believe, out in California, because he spoke out on Proposition 8. Who said that, you know, people are very taken in by this. They want to believe in this, and there's no substance. He's a Catholic priest. He's warning us not to be taken in by this.
They all want a daddy. They want a benevolent daddy.
Yeah.
In Slovakia, there is going to be a public vote on February 7th on marriage, but this is a referendum brought by the right wing. And
also pushed for by the people through petition process, I believe.
By the right wing. It has to, the one bright light for us is that they have to get a 50% voter turnout, and that is evidently difficult to do. Particularly if they did it in this country.
And Australia, the Senate there has gotten the bill to open marriage to same-sex couples. Now, they have a conservative government over there at this time. Tony Abbott, who's a right-wing Catholic, by the way, and a dope. But anyway, there is such pressure over there around this that it looks like the thing is starting to move forward. And there may be a conscience, what they call a conscience vote.
We've been looking for that for a long time from there.
We couldn't get it from the Labour government.
Exactly. There is a cute story out of Australia, though. Parents put a notice in the newspaper retracting their 19-year-old son's birth announcement as a girl. He is a transgender.
19 years ago.
Yes. So now they put an announcement in saying, we were mistaken.
Oh, he informs us that we were mistaken. Oops, our bad. We would like to present our wonderful son, Cal.
Now tidy your room.
Well, I didn't.
That's what they said.
I left out that part.
No, I thought it was cute.
It is cute. The whole thing is cute as hell, and helps with tolerance. And a breakthrough in Poland. We have the first openly gay mayor there in the northern city of Słupsk. He is Robert Biedron. He had been the nation's first out member of parliament in 2011, although you're probably going to tell me somebody else was elected at the same time.
No, but he was elected. There is another gay mayor in Poland, but of a very tiny town, and this is a more substantial town and a fairly conservative one, but he ran on a good government platform, and he said his sexual orientation was totally well known because he's an LGBT activist in Poland, and it just wasn't the issue. The issue was good government of the town, and he won. He was not the favorite going into the vote either, so that's great. Also good news, the European Court of Justice has ruled that LGBT asylum seekers cannot be forced to prove their sexual orientation.
It is a violation of human dignity, they said. They require some answers to detailed questions that not even regular viewers of Gay USA could answer probably about, to prove you're gay. And also, people were being asked to submit videos of themselves engaging in sex with someone of the same sex as part of their asylum seeking.
As if that would prove anything.
I mean, exactly.
There's a new book out in Ireland, which evidently talks, among other things, about a strong gay scene in the Irish Catholic Church. Surprise! The book is called 33 Good Men.
And,
if you're
as our
interested.
friend Father Bernard Lynch, who is an Irish gay priest, has often said, the only sin you can commit, as far as they're concerned, is being honest about it. That these priests are well known, many of them live with their lovers, but as long as they don't talk about it, it's okay.
Don't ask,
for
don't
many
tell.
of them.
Yeah. The book also includes stories about heterosexual priests with lovers. In St. Petersburg, Russia, we told you that the parents of Matthew Shepard were going to go there with the new documentary film Matthew Shepard is a Friend of Mine to the side-by-side St. Petersburg LGBT Festival. They did. The film won the Audience Award. They also screened the movie in Moscow.
But state TV in Russia ran a fake video to show how Americans make their kids gay. It showed a father covering his son's walls with gay pornography to make the child gay. I mean,
it was all a joke.
Not to the Russians.
The video was a joke, but the Russians picked it up as serious. And in St. Petersburg also, an activist was on trial for holding up a sign. He just stood holding a sign in the street saying, "My freedom is your freedom." So he went on trial for this, and protesters were in the courtroom yelling at him. The judge ruled that the cops were right to take him away when he stood outside with that sign, although wrong to detain him for a length of time. And then his lawyer leaves the courtroom, and he's attacked by a group of thugs who throw some acidic liquid on him.
Well, I wonder how things are going to go down there. I mean, of course, we're all reading how the Russian economy is suffering because of the sanctions on them because of the Ukraine.
Yes.
And as things get worse, they're going to blame us more.
Possibly.
Because part of what the Ukraine was about was turning towards the West, and that was always associated with homosexuality.
And in fact, let's see,
scores of Russians are seeking asylum. That's what gay Russians are seeking asylum elsewhere. We're reading that
thing. Anyway, in Tijuana, Mexico, the local government is supporting the creation of a new LGBT center by giving them a space rent-free for the first 2 years.
Can we go to the Caribbean for a moment?
You can.
In Suriname, the gay group there is condemning the singer King Koiba for a song calling for bullets for homos. Now, he's the king of dancehall music there. And the coordinator of the radio station there called the song irresponsible and dropped it, but not King's other songs. A police spokesperson said the song was unfriendly and violent and will investigate if a complaint is filed. And if we want to stay in the, in the Caribbean for a second?
Well, I was just going to make the connection to the case in the Supreme Court this week that was looking at like online language like that and people threatening each other and whether that was actionable or free speech or whatever. It's a very complicated
It is a very complicated
question.
one. And Barbados, a legislator there wants to make domestic violence law gender neutral, but faces opposition even from members of his own party, which is the more progressive party. Opponents call it an endorsement of same-sex unions and contrary to the biblical way.
In Latvia, if I may go back to that area, you may remember we told you a week or two ago that the foreign minister had tweeted that he was gay. Well, now a member of the ruling party, an official, has resigned his position after he tweeted about gay people. Thank God, at one time the Germans shot them.
Oh my goodness.
That was considered inappropriate.
We got good and bad news from India. They had their first Pride celebration in New Delhi. and they got about 1,000 people
No,
out there.
seventh Pride.
So no, I mean the first one. I'm sorry, the first one since the bad court ruling that upheld the sodomy laws.
Recriminalized.
That's what I meant to say. So 1,000 marched there in opposition to LGBT discrimination. But in Bangalore, 167 trans people were nabbed off the streets. It was a big roundup.
And from their homes.
They're being kept at a beggars colony. It's arbitrary detention under the Beggars Act, because a lot of them are mendicants.
Well, the word is supposedly that they were inappropriately begging, but in fact no charges have been filed, and people were arrested at home and were arrested just walking down the street, and this is all considered a put-up job, and that this is just rank discrimination to suddenly grab 167 hijras and throw them in jail.
We have had roundups of aggressive panhandling in New York as well. That's what they call it.
Yeah, but this is, a particular group with a particular identity.
Yes.
In the Gambia, which we told you is passing more draconian anti-gay laws, they are now boasting about the fact that they will not let LGBT rights be a discussion as part of foreign aid discussion. So if the U.S. or the U.K. or someone comes in and says, well, we'll talk to you about giving you foreign aid, but not until you promise to treat your gay citizens better, they say, the hell with it. We're not taking any of your foreign aid if that's a condition.
It's very ugly.
And in Uganda, President Museveni says that, here's the deal. Uganda used to have a huge AIDS problem. They had a high infection rate, and then they did a good job of really drastically reducing that infection rate.
ABC, abstinence, something, and condoms.
Be faithful.
And condoms.
And condoms. But now that infection rate is going back up, slowly but surely. So President Museveni gave a big speech about this and said condoms and circumcision do not stop HIV. You put padlocks on your private parts, which is going back to emphasizing abstinence, of course.
That doesn't generally work.
Well, in 2013, they did seriously reduce their infection rate for a while.
Not with just an abstinence-only message.
No, for an across-the-board message. But here's the problem with their epidemic. Last year, in 2013, they had 137,000 new infections out of a population of 39 million. That's 4 times the new infection rate of the U.S. with 1/8 the population.
Well, those are new infections, and we're going to talk about a lot of this in AIDS news. Are we getting to AIDS news now?
I'm doing this as a segue, and the last one is from South Africa, where the Treatment Action Coalition says that the system for fighting AIDS there is failing, that there are not enough medications, not enough care available. People don't stay on treatment. They get people on treatment and then they stop taking the pills, and the government is completely ignoring the problem.
And
so
yet,
it's not a good story.
And yet, in AIDS news,
go ahead.
At the big World AIDS Day rally at the Apollo Theater, some of these politicians got up and decided they had to sing first because they said they're never going to be on the stage again. They honestly did.
Because they were at the Apollo?
Well, Gustavo Rivera.
Did any of them get the hook?
Gustavo Rivera did it. He sang a couple of bars of Amazing Grace. But obviously, a very, very serious day. And it was packed to the rafters with folks, and a very diverse crowd. But the head of one of the leaders of UN AIDS said, because here we keep talking about, the big thing is end AIDS by 2020 through getting people in treatment, getting them undetectable, and then the virus isn't going to spread so much. So the UN guy said, and the world goal is 2030. That's kind of a new expression of it.
They love these slogans.
Well,
I just remember Margaret Heckler in the early 80s was going to have a vaccine within 2 years.
You know, the first person I spoke to at this was Tom Viola from Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. Tom has been at the fight against AIDS for 26 years. And this was before the whole thing got started. And he said, yes, for all this, and I'm here to support all this,
sure,
but poverty, racism, homophobia, all these other things.
Yeah.
And the thing is, during the course of the 3-hour program, lots of people talked about those things and said, we have to get this under control. We have to fight all these problems. But you never defeat poverty, racism completely, homophobia. You work at that, but you can't. It's almost impossible to eliminate. You understand that it's the underlying thing. So the real big ask for the New York groups, at least, and of course what they keep saying is the people who are still getting this are getting it because they don't have the supportive housing and things like that. And so now they're saying, yes, we pretty much going to get people with AIDS housed because we now have a 30% rent cap. You don't pay more than 30% of your income on rent, but we don't have it for people with HIV. And the government, that's the big push now. So that if you have HIV, you have stable housing and you're not going to progress to AIDS. You're not going to get as sick, you're going to take care of yourself. But that's it. And then the politicians start saying, well, we need to do it, but it's a heavy lift.
De Blasio evidently also at that event announced New York Knows, a new campaign for testing in all the boroughs. In 2014, we're talking about testing in all the boroughs.
More aggressive promotion of testing.
Make it a routine part of health care.
Yes.
Also something called Be HIV Sure, connecting to low-cost insurance. New infections down in New York City, except among young gay men. Now,
or men who have sex with men, as they say.
Yes. Tell us about your conversation with the health commissioner about
well,
sex
so I said, one of the things that one of the powers that we have is we have 6 mandatory AIDS lessons a year. They've never repealed that
in the schools.
In all schools across the state. And there's a similar thing in New York City. And I said, what's happening with that? She said, I don't know. I mean, she's the health commissioner. But Dimitri Daskalakis was there, and they both said this AIDS task force that the governor has appointed, Governor Cuomo, who was not there at this World AIDS Day thing, although he gave a speech in Albany, says it is one of their top priorities, is taking advantage of this.
Look, I certainly think the 69 members of this task force are extremely well-meaning. They are across the board experienced activists and players in the epidemic and in efforts to stop the epidemic. But what you can do with a task force is a question. It has to be played out in the field.
Yes.
Now, one piece of good news is that new infections are really down in the intravenous drug using community because of the consistent push for clean needles.
Yes.
That has made a major difference.
It would have made a hell of a difference if we did it in the beginning. They did do that in Great Britain right away. I mean, they realized the science of give people clean needles, they're not going to transmit HIV. And you had tremendous resistance, including among a lot of liberal politicians, especially from communities of color, who saw this as promoting drug use, which was, in other words, they didn't understand the concept of harm reduction, and that is why so many people in those communities transmitted the virus and died.
Well,
It took so long to get David Dinkins to see the wisdom of it. He was our first African-American mayor.
Well,
Charlie Rangel was terrible on it for years.
It's also because we didn't see it early enough, because people who were using drugs intravenously and people who were homeless, people were dying on the streets, and they were dying of pneumonia, and people thought that's what happens to drug users and homeless people. They die of pneumonia.
No, but long into the epidemic, and there was tremendous resistance to this.
I agree.
It took such an unconscionable. I always would just say,
saying it took hold.
I would say, not enough junkies dead for you. I would just say that at meetings. Not enough junkies dead. You want? I mean, it was almost like you want them dead.
Absolutely.
You want them off the streets,
sure,
because they're a blight on your community.
Great strategy.
And these are people that I otherwise have a lot of respect for, but you could not get through to them on this.
Yeah.
They had blocks on it, and look, that means all of us, not just these couple of African American politicians.
Look,
it's everybody.
The net result is current count: 40 million dead from AIDS worldwide, 35 million still living with HIV.
Well, and not to numb you with statistics, but one of the things that they, I haven't kept track of all the AIDS deaths in New York and where we are, but In New York City alone, 100,000 people have died of AIDS. In New York City alone. And 100,000 are living with HIV, although they say there are 22,000 walking around with it who don't know, which is why we're trying to get these folks tested. So that you are going to start seeing subway campaigns. You've been asking for this. We hope that has some effect on getting people connected to testing.
I'd like to see a lot more than subway campaigns. Here's my favorite piece of good news in this realm this week. A study of 2,000 women in Africa who are HIV positive, and they've been following them and looking at their actual virus and their health and how they're progressing. And what they have found is that the virus itself is mutating, as we've always known it does. That's one reason it's been very difficult to deal with it. And it is mutating to a less virulent strain.
It's
and
weaker.
That is fantastic
well,
news.
Slightly weaker. I mean, what they've found is that the incubation period for the virus before it causes AIDS in people who don't even know they have it, who have taken no drugs, used to be 10 years, which always made this epidemic very difficult to fight because the virus was spreading all that time. Well, now it's 12.5 years.
That's a significant difference and is great news.
Well, except for the fact that people are walking around for a long time not knowing they have it and spreading it.
Sure, and we have to get people diagnosed, we have to get people on treatment. But if the virus itself mutates to a point where it is not as fatal, that is a fantastic development and will be at least as important as any of these other interventions we're talking about, I think.
And we continue the push for gay men who have had sex in the last 25 years to be allowed to give blood, and that's still meeting with resistance on both sides of the Atlantic.
I saw something that
They want to lower it used to be 1977, now they want to make it a year. Peter Tatchell says make it 3 months, but I mean, what if you're in a couple and you're using protect? Well, shouldn't be any
What
weight.
if you are HIV negative, no matter what your sex life is?
Exactly.
Why are we doing it that way? I want to recommend something I saw and did not expect to like as much as I did, but I did like it, and that was the documentary on Showtime about the Names Project quilt, the last one. It was very good and looked at various communities, looked at the history of the quilt and why it exists and what it's done as an activist tool, and it was very moving, of course. And I would really recommend it. I'm sure it's on Showtime On Demand now and still playing in the schedule. And I'd recommend you watch the last one on Showtime.
We'll check it out. Thank you, Ann.
Sure. All right, now we're actually getting down to not too much time left.
Right.
A viewer, as we move to entertainment news, reminded me that Mike Nichols, who we talked about last week, was a co-founder of Friends Indeed, free services for people with AIDS and other life-threatening illnesses, spiritual and emotional support to the exhausted, helping out too. So thank you for that too.
All right. There was an ad for Delicate Balance, the play that's on Broadway, which they won't let us second-nighters see, the big quote in the ad is, "This is no play for sissies." And I
saw that.
I thought that was pretty bad. First of all, it's by a gay man, Edward Albee, and I just think that's gratuitous, stupid, and why are they doing that?
Exactly.
Especially since you didn't get too many good reviews.
All right, well, I got a couple of things to
play
recommend.
For sissies.
There's a documentary opening
we'll stay away.
Friday, December 5th, this Friday, at the Sunshine Theater in New York and elsewhere around the country eventually, called She's Beautiful When She's Angry. And it's a history, it's a documentary history of the beginnings of the 60s and 70s feminist movement, which I was around for. And it deals with a lot of different things, and it shows you a lot of people you didn't know. It's not just the stars, very little of them. It's all the real people who really created the movement and how they did this as activists. And there's so many parallels to every other movement, including the AIDS movement and the gay movement, and it's really enlightening and entertaining. And here's a little of the lesbian part of the movie. She's beautiful when she's angry.
The women's movement had coined the motto, the personal is political. But when you were a lesbian and you wanted to talk about lesbian relationships as opposed to heterosexual relationships, they didn't want to hear about it. And here I have to give a lot of credit to Rita Mae Brown. One thing you were not going to tell Rita was to shut up.
I knew that I was as good as they were, and I knew I am not who I sleep with. I was in Now. And as Now went on, I called him on the carpet about class, I called him on the carpet about race, and then I called him on the carpet about lesbianism. And I said, you are treating women the way men treat you, and those women are lesbians. Well, my God, you would have thought I unleashed an elephant in the middle of the room.
Love Rita Mae.
And Carla J, who was the other person there. So she's beautiful when she's angry, I highly recommend. Sunshine, Friday. Also opening Friday at the Made in New York Media Center by IFP in Dumbo, Brooklyn at 30 John Street. The Foxy Merkins, I have to show you a clip to give you the flavor because it's a comedy about lesbian hookers who hang out outside Talbot's to pick up women.
Sure.
Here's a little clip.
The film is a comedy. It was co-written with Lisa Haas and Jackie Monahan, who are the stars of the film. It's a friendship, it's sort of a love story. One of them is gay and the other one is straight. Basically, it follows these two lesbian hookers, and we go with them on their adventures.
Well, hello.
Hi. I hope you can make it to the movie, and we hope to see you there.
Does that really happen?
I don't know, but it's a very funny movie. That was the director, Madeline Olnick. It's all shot in New York, so for those of us who are here and love things like that, it's great. And it's just very amusing, the Foxy Merkins.
And I haven't been over to London for a couple of weeks, but there's a dance piece they're doing at the National Theatre called John, which is a totally homoerotic piece on the stage of the National Theatre, and it's going to be in theaters in the United States on December the 9th. Go to the National Theatre website to check out where it might be near you or all around the country. And do you have time to do my Shakespeare thing or no?
Give me 1 second to do the other, and then you can do that. We told you last week about my friend Jackie Woodson's horrible experience at the National Book Awards, where Daniel Handler, Lemony Snicket, introduced her by saying...
they're friends.
Yeah, and she won the award for young people's literature with her autobiography, Brown Girl Dreaming, wonderful book. And he gets up and says, isn't this amusing? Jackie Woodson is allergic to watermelon. Let that sink in your mind.
Right.
And she wrote the most fantastic op-ed piece about the pain of growing up as a black woman in America and why she doesn't eat watermelon.
And she spent her whole life, trying to change stereotypes, and then to, it's not a joke.
You can look at The Pain of the Watermelon Joke is the title of her op-ed piece, and it's brilliant and wonderful. Thank you, Jackie.
So about William Shakespeare, we got a picture of.
You have 10 seconds.
Well, no, just that some scholar wrote a thing dismissing his bisexuality. So somebody else, I'll send this in the email. This wonderful quote that this guy said about proving Shakespeare's bisexuality in the sonnets. It's very rich. So write to me at andyhum@AOL, and I'll send it along to you. If you want to be on our list for weekly emails.
Well, there's a tease to get on the list. We'll see you next week. Thank you.